point. Now I go crazy. This is the fun stuff.
Pasen, que tengo que grabar. Por favor.
You ready? This is almost. This is the fun stuff. Okay? Zero waste. What is it? It's a new direction. It's a new direction. We are moving from the back end of waste management. You know what the back end looks like? Incinerators and landfills. And we're moving to the front end. Not of waste management, but of resource management. And it's actually more than resource management. It's resource management, better industrial design, and post-consumerism. Now those latter two may not come in straight away, but that's ultimately what we're looking for. Moving beyond consumerism. So we need three things to get to zero waste. We need industrial responsibility at the front end, upstream. We need community responsibility at the back end, downstream. And we need good political leadership to bring those two together. And that's what we've got to hope for in Puerto Rico, that good political leadership. Now, I've divided it up into 10 steps. The whole thing is pretty daunting, especially if you look at the end. The end is we're trying to get to a sustainable society, and that is very daunting, having been going in the opposite direction for about 300 years since the Industrial Revolution. So it's a tough at the very end. But at least we can start with simple, practical, and cost-effective steps. There it is. If you want to get a preview of the whole thing, they're the 10 steps to zero waste. Source separation, door-to-door collection, composting, recycling, reuse, repair, community centers, economic incentives, waste reduction initiatives, a residual separation and research center, better industrial design, and a temporary landfill to back everything up. If you jump to here for a second, waste is a design problem. Nature makes no waste. Waste is a human invention. And so what we're asking our good designers to do is to stop making waste. Design waste out of the system. That's why I go to Italy a lot, which has been the cradle of the most creative people in the world, Italy. Trying to get the Italian designers to design waste out of the system. After all, the first person that talked about zero waste anywhere in the world was Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci, in his writings from 1500, said there's no such thing as waste. Each company's waste material must become another company's starting material. So he was focusing on industrial waste at that time. But it can be applied also to solid waste. But that's our overall goal. So we start with step one, source separation. It's these 10 things which make waste. You make waste by mixing everything together. That's what makes waste, when you mix everything together. Think about it. You mix the smelly with the toxic, with all the other stuff, then everything becomes toxic, smelly, and useless, and we don't like it. But we made it by mixing everything together. On the other hand, these things, if they keep things separate, we're still dealing with resources. Step two is, once you've got people trained to separate, then you're going to have a very convenient system to pick it up from their houses. That's why we need door-to-door collection. Now, jumping ahead, the reason you need door-to-door collection is that's the only way that you're going to get organics clean enough to get into agriculture. You've got to get the organics clean. You can get dirty recyclables, but you've got to get clean organics. To get clean organics, you've got to pick them up door to door. So let's see what San Francisco is doing. They have a 3-container system, one for the recyclables, one for the compostables, one for the residuals. They say recycling is now as easy as 1, 2, 3. Each week they pick up those 3 containers from every house, from every business. In Italy, they have a different system. In Italy, in some communities, on different days, the same trucks will pick up different materials. So in this particular town, on Mondays, they pick up the organics. On Tuesdays, the multi-material, mixed recyclables. On Wednesdays, the paper. On Thursdays, the fraction residual. So a different system. Many jurisdictions have different systems. Oh, you'll love this. I love this one. In Sicily, in Castelmonte, Newcastle, Castle Mountain. Anyway, it's a very steep community in Italy. The streets are very narrow. So what they've done here, what the mayor did, they're using donkeys. They are recovering the Ragusa marked donkey, which they have to do anyway for survival, and they're using the donkey to pick up recyclables. And these donkeys go up these narrow streets, picking up everybody's recyclables and compostables. And the people love this. They come out and feed the donkeys, the neighbors, and the tourists. Here he is meeting the tourists. Now there's a little metaphor about this. This guy was an alcoholic. He missed more days than he got to work. But since he's been working with the donkey, he's completely reformed. He hasn't missed a day since. He loves his work, he loves the donkey, and he loves this business of being able to converse with all the residents. So again, I'll probably say this several times. Zero waste is more than just saving materials. It's saving people. Remember that. I'll come back to it. Zero waste is about saving people. In Spain, in Basque Country, they've copied the Italian system. In fact, they call it the Italian method. Here you have different materials being picked up on different days. You notice the organics are picked up 3 days a week because it's hot, they can stink. And they have another way of doing it. They hang the containers with the different materials on hooks. Hooks like that. See, here's the organics. The organics go into a brown container and they're hung on the hooks. And each container has a number on it. 1870, that number belongs to this household and only this household. So you've got privacy on the one hand because no one knows whose container that is except the municipality. The municipality knows that 1870. So you've got transparency when you need it, but privacy when you don't. A very convenient, simple system. And then if you don't have a big wall, that was on the back of a pelota field. With this one, you can build these posts at regular intervals. So it's very easy for the citizens. In Wales, again, another system. In Wales, they have curbside sort, slow recycling. So special vehicles which are compartmentalized, and then when the truck drives up, the householders have put all their materials into one container, and then these workers separate the materials at the curb. Now it's slower, that's why they call it slow recycling, like slow food, but you get a much higher quality product because it hasn't had a chance to commingle straight from the side of the street. So it combines convenience for the citizen, but at the same time it maximizes quality for the municipality. And you don't have to do it large scale. This is small scale. This is a converted milk lorry, truck, which is electric, which has been converted more or less into the same thing. You can see all the different compartments, and they pick up the different materials and separate it. And then they have this marvelous system. Oh yay! Oh yay! The town crier walks up and down and says, these wretched people on such and such a street did not separate their garbage, and it's on display. A little museum of people that have been slobs and didn't separate in the system. Brazil, again, saving people. You know, in every developing country, every developed country for that matter, if you go to a landfill, you'll always find people scavenging from the landfill. I've seen it in Moscow, I've seen it in Costa Rica, I've seen it all over the world. Now what they're doing in Brazil, they form these guys in cooperatives. 1 million waste pickers are now organized into unions and cooperatives in Brazil, and they've won the right to collect directly from households. So they're providing this service, and they are also being provided with these decent trucks to do it. So you've got this massive deployment of people to make it convenient for people to separate. Step 3 is composting. Just discuss a hierarchy for the moment. What do you do with discarded organics? Well, the first thing is try to feed people if you possibly can. Feed people. And there are lots of communities around the world that are making sure that the food coming from hotels or supermarkets beyond the due date, they have got to homeless people. And we need to continue to do that. After that, we need to feed animals. And many people do, naturally, but not everybody thinks about that. Not everybody thinks about that. If you don't have a dog or a cat, maybe your neighbor has a dog or a cat. Why don't you feed them the scraps? It's simple. Next, feed the soil. That's what we're going to do, feed the soil. And as far as composting is concerned, or vermiculture, where worms do a fantastic job, you want to have a hero amongst the animal kingdom, or whatever it's called, a worm. Worms are fantastic. For us, they're fantastic. So first of all, you want to see how many you can do backyard or on site. There are very elegant Swedish systems which can be used in institutions, in schools, in colleges, totally enclosed, a little expensive, but do a very, very good job with no smell at all. I visited them just recently in China and in Italy. Community composting. Zurich, Switzerland has 1,000 community composting plots, run from anything from 3 households to 100 or even 200 households. They share responsibility for a little low-tech composting, no cost to the government at all, and yet they're looking after 50% of the organic waste in Zurich. And I asked the organizer, what's the best thing that's come out of this program? And he thought for a moment, he said, I think it's the social ramifications. He said, it helps to fight the anonymity of living in a big city. People are meeting over the compost pile. Think of those poor Swiss people, that their idea of entertainment is actually meeting somebody over a compost pile. I mean, how else are you going to meet people? You live in a high-rise building, right? You get out of your room and you go down this elevator, then you go to work, all your communication is over here. Then you come back, and you're back in the elevator, back up to your room, and to television. But the compost pile group breaks into this system, like a little anarchist, don't it? Okay. And you can do it on farms. That's what I would do in Puerto Rico. I would go around and find all the farmers that are prepared to take a little bit of the organics and co-compost it with their manure. And knowing that they're going to be paid a little bit for this, it's still going to be cheaper than landfilling it or doing anything else with it. But it's got to be clean. It's got to be clean. And then finally, a centralized facility. And that's, I think, we're going to see a bit more of that in a moment. In Oxford, UK, this is where they have one of these food banks, where people collect their food from supermarkets before the due date and get it to people, homeless people or elderly people. In Preston, Wales, Preston in Wales, they collect the organics from the whole community, and then they have a community garden, and they use the community-derived compost to grow fruit and vegetables and everything else and share it with the community. In Spain, they have, here's an example of a small community compost pile. This would be fenced off, and people in local high-rise buildings can use this to compost. And here, you can see what a wonderful job. This is somebody who's emptying here the organics from the brown container, the one that's hung on the hooks. And look at this. The quality of the compost, unbelievable. They are getting 99.7% 96% purity in this organics. So don't tell me that people are slobs, they won't do it. These people are doing it. They are doing everything that they're asked to do in terms of putting the right stuff into the container. I'm not saying it happens overnight, but you've got to work at it. In this particular case, these people, you know why they were so keen that this is going to work? They were fighting an incinerator. And the end result of this activity has been to stop 2 incinerators. They stopped one very early, and they shut the other one down before it had been completed. That's what's at stake. And if somebody said the same thing to you, if they said, look, we're going to give this one more shot. We're going to give the people of Puerto Rico one more shot to persuade us that we can do this with people rather than machines. You've got 5 years. 5 years to persuade us that the people can do this. If not, don't bother to protest or argue. We'll have to build an incinerator. If that's the ultimatum that you gave the people of Puerto Rico, then it will be a different kind of test. A test that they've never had yet. Now, in San Francisco, they've added some economic spice to this. They've said to the restaurants and the hotels, it's 25% cheaper if you put out clean organics compared to mixed waste. And that economic incentive is working beautifully. And they also send personnel from the waste department to the hospital, to the restaurants and the hotel, and teach the kitchen staff exactly what goes into that container and what they don't want into that container. And here's the composting facility. It's outside San Francisco. It's surrounded by farmland, and the farmers are happy to use this compost and to grow fruit and vegetables, quite big ones, and those fruit and vegetables are going back to San Francisco. And 200 vineyards are using the compost to grow the vines. But notice, look, so here's the compost being supplied between the vines. So not only is the compost growing the vines, but also it is nurturing cover crops between the vines. This is the cover crops which on their roots have nodules which make nitrogen, fixed nitrogen. And this is where you get those roots where you're fixing the carbon in addition to everything else that you're doing. And I've been through that already. So step 4 is recycling. This is the recycling facility for San Francisco. It's right on the port. You have ports here. Why can't you have a big recycling facility there? And you've seen that. Okay. Oh, what I didn't show you, I've dropped a few slides here from normal. The people, okay, let me back up. The company that owns the contract to pick up the recyclables, the organics, and the residuals, this company does not own the landfill. So they have but they do own the recycling and the composting. So they have a huge incentive to collect this material well, get the recyclables to the recycling facility, get the recyclables to the compostables composting, but they don't want to send anything to the landfill. It's their competitor. So the economic incentives are great. The other thing you should know is that the workers own this plant. All the workers working in the composting facility and the recycling facility own this company called Recology. Now, reuse and repair. The difference between reuse and recycling is reuse is low volume. It's only about 2%, but high value. Compared to recycling, recycling is high volume, low value. So here's what I mean. This is the waste stream of Los Angeles. Someone's analyzed it. 2% is what they call reusable items. But that 2% is worth well over a third of the total value. Now what that means is if you capture that stuff, you capture those reusable objects, you're going to create jobs and small businesses and make money. Here we go. So here's a company that's been doing this for 30 years, Urban Ore. It's been collecting building materials and appliances and furniture for 30 years. It's grossing $3 million a year. and there's 27, it's actually up to 37 full-time, well-paid jobs handling this material. Everything you can think of. It's like a second-hand shopping mall. And building materials, and so on. Now, over on the other side of the country, in Burlington, Vermont, a company called Resource, used to be called Recycle North. It's a beautiful layout of these reusable objects, not junk. They are also taking people off the street and training them, either on large appliances, small appliances, electrical goods, electronic goods. And after 9 months, they help them to get a job. Again, we're not just talking about recovering materials, we're recovering people here. Jobs, jobs, jobs. They're also linked to a deconstruction company that takes down buildings carefully, recovers the materials, and in some cases uses the materials that they've covered as a starting material to make beautiful furniture. Jobs, jobs, jobs. So economically, incineration represents one big black box. Zero waste represents hundreds of little green boxes. And that's from Ted Ward. He actually directed the first zero waste program in California, even before San Francisco. Now, we're going to have some fun. Gothenburg, they don't have much fun in Sweden. There's no sunshine up there. It's very dark. And they build incinerators everywhere. But there's one place, Gothenburg, where they've had fun. They built a lovely reuse park. It's a park. You go in there, and when you go in, there's a band playing. And when you walk around, there's clowns to entertain the kids. Can you imagine this in Puerto Rico? It'd be fun, right? And then when you go to the toilet, here's the toilet, believe it or not. There's a toilet. It's an art gallery. You can sit there and choose the painting that you're going to buy afterwards. But my real favorite is this dog. This is the famous separating dog. This dog can separate mixed recyclables into 6 different categories. Yes. Now, if a dog in Sweden can separate into 6 different categories, I think you can continue the thought. And here's the director of this park, Paul Martinson, handing a T-shirt to the King of Sweden. So I've got several videotapes. You can find that on our webpage, AmericanHealthStudies.org. I think every single one of them features reuse operations because they're much more fun than everything else. So the next question which dominates, we've had the first 5 steps, okay? The next 5 steps deal with reducing and eventually eliminating the residual fraction without descending to incineration. So the first step is economic incentives. Now, in this system, it's called the pay-as-you-throw system, P-A-Y-T. The compostables are free, the recyclables are free, but the residual fraction, the more you make, the more you pay. And the results with this system, I think there are several hundred of these now going in the United States. The results are phenomenal, up to 40% reduction just by the single step. And Italy, Villafranca d'Asti, went from 70% to 85% diversion using pay-as-you-throw system. It doesn't have to be complicated. In this Italian town, they just put a chip in the bag, and nothing very complicated. Listen to this. This is how simple this is. If you put the bag out, you're charged. If you don't put the bag out, you're not charged. So you can just save money just like that with your careful purchasing. Now, in Seattle, Washington, a long time ago, they had a very simple system. They said, right, we've got to lay out this system. You could do this in Puerto Rico. You could say, right, you will be able to choose what size container that you use for the residual fraction. You know the wheelie wheelies? You can have a small one, We can have a medium-sized one, we can have a big one. The catch is, the bigger that you choose, the more money you pay each month. It's up to you. It's up to you. Do you want to be a slob? Pay more money. You don't want to be a slob? You want to save money?
Plastic containers.
Yeah, they're the plastic containers. Yeah, the wheelie bean things. Yeah. So they're the first 7 steps, and I can tell you right now, communities have been able to get over 80% diversion up to those 7 steps. And most people will be happy with that. But then you've got the purists amongst you who say, Dr. Connett, you talked about zero waste, I want you to show us how to get to zero waste. Okay, all right. Then step 8. Sorry, we haven't got there yet. Step 7 is waste reduction initiatives. In Ireland, the government put a 15-cent tax on plastic shopping bags. In 1 year, those bags went down by 92%. Nobody can believe that. That's what happened. In Italy, several supermarkets allow you to refill your own bottles. And this one in particular, this food store, there are now 4 of them since I started speaking about this. There's 4 of those in Italy. And when you go in, there are 60 taps. 60 taps. You can refill detergents, shampoos, water, milk, honey, beer, olive oil, and my favorite, vino. So you go in, get the glass here. Very nice, very nice. You can look at the wall and see where this wine came from. Then you can try the next one, and then the next one. It's my favorite place in the whole of Italy. And no plastics. If you don't have your own bag, you can buy one of jute or one of cotton, but not plastic. And in the schools, in this school, they've pulled all the plastic out. They're using glass, stainless steel, and china, and they're using tap water, not bottled water. Now, they can do that in Italy. You know why? Because they don't fluoridate their water. You could do that in Puerto Rico because you don't fluoridate your water here. That's good news. Another reason why you can expect hordes of Americans to come here, or from the mainland, to drink your non-fluoridated water. And the babies, this is a zero-waste baby. This baby has a reusable diaper, not a disposable one. Waste reduction. That's a big item. Throwaway diapers are about 14% of the residual fraction. Step 8. Step 8 is the most important step to get close to zero waste. Step 8 makes the residual fraction very visible. Incineration makes the residuals disappear. We don't want that to happen. We want to make those residuals very visible. So, it's in 2 parts. First of all, it's a residual separation facility, and then a zero waste research centre. The first we have running. In Nova Scotia, these are built in front of the landfill. No material can enter the landfill without going through this facility. More material is recycled, toxics are removed and identified, and the dirty organic fraction is stabilised above ground before it causes harm underground. This type of facility is running in Nova Scotia. Here it is in aerial view. This is outside Halifax. Here you can see the landfill, and above it you can see the residual facility, the screening facility. Notice that the road comes only to the separation facility. The trucks cannot go directly into the landfill. Which, if you've got the mafia involved in any way, this is a way of keeping them out. So this is what it looks like, a close-up. You have the front part, which is the separation, the second part, which is the composting operation, and the third part is the curing area for the compost before it goes to the landfill in the top right. Here I am introducing it. Here's the material. Comes in plastic bags. The bags are very carefully opened, not crushed, just open. They go onto long conveyor belts where paid workers, well-protected workers, are pulling out more recyclables, more toxics, and I don't know what's happened there. And then the dirty organic fraction is not touched. That goes all the way to the end of the conveyor belt, where it's shredded. The shredded material is put into concrete troughs, and a turning machine runs down the troughs, rails on top of the troughs, and shifts, aerates the material, shifts it about 10 feet each day, and it does this for about 18 days, and it's composting. It's composting for about 18 days to stabilize it above ground before it causes problems underground. So, biological stabilization. And that eventually will end up in the landfill, as usually as landfill cover. So it's an interim solution.
Sir, what's the name of the facility?
It's, yes, it's Otter Lake. Otter Lake. Otter as in animal.
Yeah.
Otter Lake, Nova Scotia. So there's a whole videotape on this. If you're interested, I've got the whole thing, 30 minutes, going through every step of their program. Now, into this facility, we need to add a zero-waste research center. We need a zero-waste research center to study the currently non-recyclable materials. And for these, we need professors and students. Be it professors and students, we have a student here, met him earlier on, engineer. We need you, if you're interested in sustainability, this is where you study it. This is the workshop for sustainability, looking at our bad industrial design. So this Zero Waste Research Center can improve the capture rate of the stuff that we can handle. It can recommend improved waste avoidance strategies to businesses. It can look for local uses for some materials. And it can recommend better industrial design for packaging and products. And finally, it can link with other aspects of sustainability. To me, this is the most exciting thing. The whole notion of involving higher education in something very practical on the one hand, but yet very potentially very creative source of personnel to study sustainability is very exciting to me. Very, very exciting. And this island will be a great place to do it. Remember, I said this, nature makes